So the purpose of the Bible is widely misunderstood. It's not meant to be read as a textbook. In fact, it's not meant to be read even as like a fiction novel or a fantasy book. I mean, it's not gonna work as any of those things. It is a historical book. I believe the Bible actually is a historical account of real stories. However, if you only read it as such, it's not going to serve the greatest purpose that God intended it to. God preserved this for us so that we can literally be transformed by it. And it's by His Spirit, by His supernatural presence, who He actually is, coming in and revealing truths to us as we open it and behold who He is. This way surpasses and way transcends intellectual knowledge. And there's tons of people who have a ton of intellectual knowledge on the Bible. Um, but if we only read this only from a scholarly standpoint, but not as a son, you end up with empty knowledge. And Paul made this genius statement that knowledge puffs up, but love edifies. And after looking at that in Greek, I can confidently say I believe what he's trying to say there. You could make the analogy of like a hot air balloon. Somebody's full of hot air potentially, but I think a better way of understanding that analogy is becoming inflamed. Inflammation is what happens to joints when they're not being used. If somebody's stationary all the time, people who have office desk jobs sit 8, 9, 10 hours a day, never exercise, so on and so forth, they tend to become very inflamed in their bodies. In the same manner, when we just are stationary and we're not doers of the word, but we're just after knowledge alone, and not knowledge according to love, just head knowledge, you'll become inflamed. Versus if you open this book and you actually expect God to reveal something to you that's beyond intellectualism, but get straight to the heart of who you are and why, you will actually start to read this book the way God intends, which is not for you to read it, but for it to read you. And this is that idea of looking into the law, the perfect law of liberty, which is kind of an oxymoron statement that James made. The law is freedom, and true freedom can only come from knowing the one who sets us free, knowing who God actually is. And you might wonder, how could a book, how could the words in that book have the ability to bring freedom in my life from whatever it is you may struggle with that you don't want to struggle with? And think about it like this. Words are so powerful, and this is not new age. This is not manifestation, witchcraft type of doctrine. This is Bible. Words are so powerful from the time you're a kid. If people speak certain things over you, that can result in you now not feeling loved, not feeling like you're good at whatever it is that you may have had hopes and dreams to do. People tear it down, and they say you're trash at that. You like to sing. People say keep it to yourself. Who sang that song? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Let them sing it. Jokes like that, and those words can actually literally cause you to think you're something or somebody you're not, or that you're not good at something that God made you to do, so on and so forth. And it can get to the point where people are verbally abusive to the point that you got to go see a counselor. People go see counselors and psychologists to try and undo the things that have been spoken over them that shape their reality and change how they view themselves. And that's just from people. So how much more powerful then is it to find out what God actually has to say about you so that He can undo, not just undo, but completely transcend, completely override the lies that were spoken over you. But this is where only God Himself can reveal the truth of what He's speaking over you. Because if you try to read this book without inviting Him into the matter, without desiring for him to reveal to you who he actually is and humbling yourself before him, it'll seem like he's just a very angry, judgmental God. I thought the same thing growing up. I grew up in the church. My mom would homeschool me and make me read the Old Testament to get familiar with the Bible stories and whatnot. And I just thought God was very strange, very hard to understand. Shout out to my mom, though. Thank you for getting me familiar with truths of God, because that was needed later on in life when I decided I really wanted to call on God and know him for who he actually is, because he's mysterious, and so if you're on the outside looking in, he can seem very confusing. But once you desire to know him for who he actually is and he reveals his love to you, this book comes alive and you find out that he's for you, and he's not like people who want to tear you down. He wants to build you up and show you how he created you with such an immense value that he was willing to come to earth himself and die for you. God died on a cross. It's not just Jesus died on a cross. God died on a cross. The amount of statements Jesus made confirming that him and the Father are one, and that he was indeed the express image of the Father. He was indeed God in the flesh. He was indeed the great I am, as he expressed in John chapter 8. And they picked up stones to stone him because they couldn't believe he just quoted the Old Testament and said it was him and that he existed way before them, before Abraham. God died on a cross and rose again, proving that he was indeed exactly who he said he is, so that he could show you exactly who he says you are.